I think this is more of a test than anything. You can probably hear there's a bit of noise in the background, and I know I'm quite a way away from the microphone itself. Also, I think the recorder might be flying around the place once again to full swing. In case you haven't guessed, I'm actually driving at the moment, and I don't want to be holding this and causing myself any problems crashing into things. The commute. So yeah, I get up quite early, usually before 6:30. Sometimes a bit earlier if I've not been sleeping very well. I'm not really a very good sleeper, if I'm honest. But yeah, my alarm goes off at 6:30. I'm normally already up. And I'm out the door for just after 7. I aim to get to work before 7:30. Work is actually close to the centre of Dublin, where I live. So my commute is in line with everybody else's pretty much. So the earlier I can get out, the better. So it seems to be a good time to get out, just after 7. If I leave it after 7:30, every 5 minutes seems to add 10 minutes. And that can be a problem. And you can spend most of your time commuting. With no traffic, it's about 20 minutes. With heavy traffic, it can be anything up to an hour, but usually around the 30-35 minutes. Today, though, the commute's going to be fairly light, so I've left it a bit later to leave. It's now 10 to 8, and the computer tells me I'm going to be in work in 19 minutes, which is pretty good. I'm going to go down the M50 motorway, and hopefully it shouldn't be too bad. It's quite a nice day. Today is the 5th of July. I'm not sure that the 5th of July is famous for anything, maybe other than it's after the 4th of July, and that seems to be a really big deal in the United States. So if you're in the United States listening to this, I'd just like to say, parts of the US it would still be the 4th of July. I'm just looking at the clock, it's not 8 a.m. yet. So anybody who's based on the western coast of the United States, it's still a happy 4th of July, I suppose. But I am actually British, so I'm not quite sure I should really be enjoying the celebrations as much. I don't want to be too political now, but if I'm honest, if it was a toss-up between Trump and Theresa May, it'd be neither of them, to be honest. We live in strange times, but so if you're on the West Coast, for the next 10 minutes at least, happy 4th of July. And from everybody else in the US, I hope you had a good one. So I've just joined the motorway. I'm heading south and now sort of heading east on the southern part of Dublin. It's a very interesting motorway, the M50. This section was the most expensive part of the M50 because the south side of Dublin is, shall we say, more prosperous in general than the north side, with maybe a couple of exceptions. And when they come to build this motorway, which is essentially to relieve traffic, from having to go through the centre of Dublin, it meant they had to buy land, and the land they had to buy was expensive. Plus, there was a lot of resistance. There's a college resisted. There's also a place called Marley Park, and then cutting a bit out of that, I think, as well. And I think there had to be some explosives involved to make parts of the motorway. And I think it was generally unpopular to some of the more wealthy residents of this part of Dublin. So it was originally built with 2 lanes. I suppose at that time there was very few parts of Ireland that had anything more than 2 lanes, which you could argue would be the normal lane and an overtaking lane. I suppose with 2 lanes though, people don't seem to care, they just go with either. And then it was decided fairly quickly after the motorway was completed and opened that 2 lanes wasn't enough. So they then went about expanding it now. The powers that be, the contractors, the planners, well, they said, well, we knew this was going to happen, so we made sure there was room, there was extra space for this extra lane. It just makes you wonder why they didn't do it in the first place. And I guess money was probably the reason. get people to pay twice for something when, you're going to make twice as much money, aren't you? Sections of the M50 is also a toll road. There's a bridge that goes over the Liffey. I won't be crossing that today. That's if I was heading north from where I live in Dublin. I won't be crossing that. But the bridge was a private-public partnership. And the plan was, obviously, this private money would be paid back from the toll. We have an interesting tradition in Ireland of having toll bridges and toll motorways and telling people it'll be paid back in 8 years and then we'll get rid of the toll and it'll be free. And that never happens, of course. I do believe there's VAT, value-added tax. For anybody outside the UK and Ireland, that's essentially a tax on everything. Well, it's meant to be like anything that's a luxury item. I'm not quite sure that, driving around Ireland is a luxury. Maybe it is, I suppose. But I think buses pay it as well when they go through the toll. So essentially it's a tax on everybody and consumers on any product that isn't on the excluded product list. So basically when you earn money in Ireland, they tax you heavily, and then when you spend your money, they tax you again. So I think the VAT was probably the big element when it comes to the toll roads and the toll bridge. And I think that obviously they're employing people, so you could argue, well, that's a good thing, but not many people, if we're honest. But there would be some tax contribution from that to the state, so I suppose it's all good. For the state is, anyway. So now I'm coming up to my junction on the M50 for me to exit. I don't really do much driving around on the motorway in the morning. I'm feeling still a bit fragile. It's still quite early. I don't do anything too extravagant, so I just sit in the left-hand lane, unless I end up behind something really slow. It really shouldn't be on the motorway. And in that instance, I would overtake. But there's such a disparity between the left-hand lane and the other two lanes in terms of speed. It means I would have to put my foot down a little bit to get around them. So it'd have to be pretty slow now. I'm thinking something like a real heavy, large truck, maybe carrying a heavy load. Some vehicles are not allowed on the motorway. They're exceptionally slow. And yet sometimes you do find them going on the motorway. Maybe there's no alternative. I mean, maybe, well, I find that hard to believe. So anyway, I've just exited the motorway at junction 13. This route to work takes me past a place called Dundrum. Quite an affluent, I think, part of Dublin. And it's, I suppose, the focal point of Dundrum is the shopping centre, really. It's quite an interesting story about the shopping centre. It isn't the biggest in Ireland, but it's pretty big. And it's very British. A lot of UK chains, and I do believe it was mostly built and paid for by UK money. So walking around it, you probably get a feel that it was more UK than Ireland. Some very nice shops in there, selling some very expensive items, and it's always pretty busy. I think it opens at 10 a.m. in the morning, so it won't be open yet. There might be staff going in, and there's certainly be security staff, maybe some maintenance staff in there at the moment. But the car park is huge. I think that signifies probably how popular the place is. I think the car park is way bigger than the shopping centre. It's a multi-storey, and it's multi-layered, and driving into the car park and driving down to the lowest level is really quite an achievement. I don't know how many, I'm not even going to add up how many circles you have to go down each level down to the bottom. But essentially the quietest car park is at the bottom if you're worried about finding a parking space. So yeah, 10 a.m. it's Friday. That's one of the reasons the traffic's pretty light. I'm not quite sure why that is. Maybe people don't bother going in on a Friday, or maybe because it's a sunny day they're on the bikes, but that could be any day, not just Friday. So I'm not quite sure why it's so quiet at the moment, and it is on most Fridays. So at 10 a.m. It'll open, and it's quite impressive how quickly the car park starts to fill up, and just how busy it can get. You'd expect the demographic, because it is a work day, you would expect there to be maybe older people there. I do believe that the schools are out at the moment. School children probably will be there as well. I think there's a certain demographic shouldn't really be there, maybe. That middle ground of heavy lifters, individual contributors, whatever you want to call them, but that make up the bell curve, the bulk of society, paying taxes and earning money, who are enslaved and chained to an office somewhere, probably have their own desk and an office chair, and really are not allowed to go to Dundrum, do a bit of shopping during work time when they should be at work. I'm a firm believer that working should be more flexible, and you shouldn't be tied to a time or a place. I'm very lucky. I work in the tech industry, and all the systems that I support and manage, well, none of them are in Ireland. They're across the globe, from the west coast of the US right through to Tokyo, Europe, Germany, shortly Australia will be somewhere as well, I think. So I have a global reach. So to me, having to go to an office in Dublin every day, 5 days a week, from 7 a.m. till 4, I think is more of it just doesn't make sense. It's a discipline thing, I feel, more than anything. Just so you know your place, and that you know what, you're not in charge. But hey, we all answer to someone. That's just how life works, I suppose. Society works. So I've just passed Dundrum Town Centre. I think that's what it's called. It's very interesting. I always call it Dundrum Shopping Centre. What confuses me about Dundrum Town Centre is there is a Dundrum Town Centre, a real one as well. And there's also another shopping centre which I'm passing now, which looks like it's still got shops in it, but it's like, I don't know, it's like the uncle you never talk about. The member of the family that not necessarily shunned, but I think the car park's always empty as well. It certainly is at the moment, but like I said, it's pretty early. I'm now, we have an interesting transportation system in Dublin, which is relatively recent, and it's called the Luas. It's spelled L-U-A-S, and there's a bridge in Dundrum. And looking at it now, because I'm just about, once the traffic light turns to green, I'm actually going to go under this bridge. And it's quite low. I mean, I suppose you could argue it's architecturally pleasing, but it's still a big bridge that's quite low. And every so often the trundle, it's an electric tram, which gets power, luckily enough, from above, from a pantograph. I think it'd be an absolute disaster if it had a live rail, because it is pretty much integrated into the centre of Dublin, and you can cross the lines at certain places. Unfortunately, there have been a few fatalities over the years. I was sort of not quite sure why in some ways, because it's a big noisy thing, and you know where it's going to be. It's going to be on the tracks. I mean, if you look at a car can go pretty much anywhere. Jeez, it can mount the pavement, which would be absolutely horrible. But so unfortunately there's been a few, and I think the rails themselves can be quite slippy. I think there's been a few accidents involving motorbikes when they've crossed the rails. They didn't have enough purchase on the tyres and the wet steel or iron, and they've had a bit of a mollocks up, really. But today, looking at the sky at the moment, I can see planes flying over at high altitude. It's a sunny day. There's some wispy cloud around. I always think that's a good thing. I mean, everybody likes a nice clear blue sky. The little bit of cloud now towards the evening time, it'll keep some of that heat in, and that'll be good. That's all good. We all like it to be nice and warm in the evening. There's nothing worse in some parts of the world where you get a really warm day. I mean, really warm, I suppose, in Irish terms, is above 20 degrees centigrade. That's 60 blah in Fahrenheit. But it's ruined then if you have a really cold evening. Especially if you've gone out in the early evening when it's still been quite warm. You wouldn't be carrying a jacket, maybe. I mean, no one likes to carry a jacket around. and then you may have partied or just, had a nice meal, a few glasses of wine, in a nice restaurant somewhere. And then when you come outside, it hits you just how cold the weather has got, So I don't think anybody likes that sort of situation. So it's nice to have a bit of wispy cloud, just enough to keep that heat in a little bit longer, so that you don't have to carry a jacket unnecessarily. I mean, it's a bit like the umbrella, really. I mean, the umbrella is a fantastic invention, but nobody wants to carry a full-size umbrella around. Not when you really don't know what the weather's going to be like. It can be so changeable in Ireland, especially in Dublin. We have some days where we might have it sunny, raining, snowing, hailstones, windy, all in the same day, and that can be quite interesting. But we shouldn't really complain, because compared to other parts of the world, we have a fairly mild climate. It rarely goes below 0 degrees centigrade, 32 degrees Fahrenheit, and it really gets really hot above 30 degrees. I think if it hits 30, the media normally tell us we're having a mini heat wave. I'm not quite sure what a mini heat wave is. I think I can get more than 1 day of heat. I'm not sure what the temperature will be today. At the moment it's 15.5 degrees. It certainly looks warmer than it is, but I'm not going to be carrying a jacket or an umbrella today. So I'm really pushing the boat out here and taking a risk. And I might do a little episode later on and just let you know how that went. If nothing of note happens, yeah, you won't hear that now. I don't think I'll waste anybody's time by telling you that it was exactly as it was before. So now I'm just coming up to work. Google Maps is taking me through a housing estate. It's quite a nice one. Lots of semi-detached houses, I think I can see at the moment. Unfortunately, there's a few speed bumps, but this is the best way to go to my office, because it cuts out some of the more congested roads. Having said that, though, at this time of day, would there be that much congestion on a Friday? I certainly haven't seen that. I've seen a couple of cyclists. I'm not a big fan of the cyclist on the commute, if I'm honest. I'm not against people who cycle. I think it's a very honourable hobby, and the sport, it looks a lot of fun. From my perspective, cycle lanes and cyclists can be a little bit of a hassle on the commute. They can get quite angry at me. I've had quite a few cyclists now saying a few choice words, but they don't do it to buses. They don't have a go at buses. Maybe it's to do with the size of the bus, or the fact that it's more socially responsible to be sitting with the general public on a bus instead of driving along in my 535D BMW with surround sound, heated seats. It's a really nice executive saloon. I think in America you'd probably call that a sedan. It's got a boot, well, you call it a trunk, and it isn't like a hatchback. I'm not sure what they call a hatchback in the US. If anybody knows what you call a hatchback in the US, that's fine. I'm not interested. Right, so I'm just waiting to turn out of this estate onto a main road. There's a small section of main road. And this is quite a sticky point for me, because there is a cycle lane here, and I have had issues here with cyclists. Well, I haven't. I'm quite happy for the cyclists, but if you inadvertently block their cycle lane, I have had them banging on the boot, and that's the trunk if you're in the US. There's only one cyclist I can see at the moment. Lovely young lady here now, cycling to work. I'm certainly going to let her go, and now I'm going to go for it. So I'm turning right, so now I'm going to drive on the left, which is the correct side of the road, and turning right out of a junction can always be a little bit fraught with danger because you're crossing the path of oncoming traffic. But today that was pretty good, and I think it's just because traffic is light. I'm now into the business park, where my work is. I won't name the location at the moment to protect the innocent, but the parking is always an issue here because we're allocated only so many spaces. This is another driver for getting in early, and a lot of people really can't get in early, so it is advantageous to do that, to get a parking space. And as I can see now, there's a good few parking spaces available. It is now just gone 8 a.m. It's 2 minutes past, which I don't consider to be very early to be getting into work now, but it's certainly late for me. I have to do a little special reversing manoeuvre because the space I go for, which is the closest at the rear of the building to the walkway, because I'm not lazy, I like to be efficient and spend as little time walking as possible. Physical activity never really suited me, even when I was young and fit. So I have to do, you could almost call it a Beijing turn. I have to reverse into the space. It's really a one-trick pony. And there's a cyclist and a cyclist spot just in front of me. A cyclist has just pulled up and he's giving me awful queer looks. Maybe you can see that I'm talking to myself, but that wouldn't be the first time. I mean, you should realise just how he looks. He looks absolutely ridiculous. And he's now going to go into work all sweaty. And I think there's a shower in work. Anyway, I'm here now. Thank you for listening. Hope you're still awake.